On May 21st, 2025, two Israeli embassy workers were shot and killed outside a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C. Now, I have an unclassified document that was written the day after the incident, and the goal is to walk you through the document to find out where is the clues, where is the learning, where is the assailant on the pathway to violence, to better understand what happened, to see if this incident was preventable. So the document that I have is unclassified. It was released the day after the incident, so the 22nd of May. Homeland Security critical incident note, and as I mentioned, it's unclassified. So I'm going to read you through what happened. I'm going to break the incident down step by step according to this critical incident note, this unclassified document. So on the 21st of May at approximately 21:08, that's 8 minutes past 9 p.m., 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, Illinois, shot and killed two Israeli embassy staff outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. This is obviously in DC. Now, the victims, an Israeli national with German citizenship and a US citizen, were leaving a reception hosted by the American Jewish Committee. And it said in Rodriguez's alleged manifesto, he justified violence and stated that he wanted to draw attention to the actions of both the United States and Israel. So what happened immediately after this attack is very interesting. Immediately following the shooting, Rodriguez entered the museum. He pulled out some type of symbolic item and began chanting, "Free Palestine, Free Palestine," and that he did this for Gaza before he was detained by museum staff, and then he was later arrested by the police. Now, this is a trend that we are starting to see. It used to be a lot of mass shooters. They used to do a couple of things. One, they would, an active assailant is really a math equation, distance over time. They want to kill as many people as possible in the shortest distance in the shortest amount of time. Or second, they will look to take their own lives. Mass shooters are not just homicides, they are suicides. So generally, they come to kill as many people as possible, or they're going to take their own life, or the police are going to neutralize them. What we saw here is very interesting. We've seen this in a couple of cases, but people are more making these political statements. So not only did he just shoot these two individuals, he then walked inside the museum shouting free Palestine, and really did it for Gaza. And he waits for the police to come and arrest him. And it later says that while in police custody, Rodriguez immediately confessed to the shooting, and he informed the DC Metropolitan Police Department, where he discarded the firearm, which was later recovered by authorities. So he always intended to make this political statement that he didn't want to escape. He didn't want to be shot so he couldn't tell his story. He wanted to survive, and he wanted to walk in and say, here's why I did it, so his message could be heard. Very interesting that we're starting to see this trend now, that these political statements are being made. So the next piece of information we have in this unclassified report, it says that law enforcement reported that Rodriguez had no criminal background and that there were no known threats to the event, the facility, or the surrounding area. So I first want to address the fact that he was this lone wolf and no criminal history. Incredibly difficult to identify a lone wolf who has no criminal background, is not on any intelligence radar. However, we now know and agree that there is this pathway to violence that these assailants go through. A lot of these cases have leakage. They're building manifestos. We're going to talk about that a bit later. They're posting things online. Their friends, their families see their changing personalities. And most often, if not the spoken word, their behaviors say that this person's on a pathway to violence. They're not in a good place. And here's what they may do. So lone wolves are incredibly difficult, but we have to take some faith and belief in the fact that through their behaviors, generally they give us notifiable and identifiable clues, which if put together can say that something bad is going to happen. But If this guy was a lone wolf with no criminal history, very, very challenging. However, but what is interesting here is that the police then go on to say that, and bear in mind, this is written the day after the incident, there is no known threats to the event, facility, or surrounding area. Now, this is the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. Let me say that again. The Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., and they say there was no known threats to the event, facility, or surrounding area. Now, we don't need to go into the politics of what's going on in the Middle East right now, but I liken this subject a little bit to the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, who was gunned down and killed last December, I believe it was, in New York. Now, why was he killed? Well, we know the assailant, Luigi, was a sympathizer with those that were suffering at the hands of what he called was the aggressor, which is the pharmaceutical and the medical industry that are almost like stealing from the poor and given to the rich. They're lacing their pockets with all these big profits at a time when they are denying mass numbers of medical claims for people that are in need of medical assistance for some life-saving treatments and medication. So we know that we start to see this Robin Hood sort of steal from the rich to give to the poor is one of the reasons why Luigi, the assailant, by some is seen as a hero, because they don't agree with what he did, but they can understand the mission and how he got there. Now, why do I share this a little bit about how Brian Thompson was murdered? Well, he had no executive protection team with him. He was the CEO of a medical healthcare company. They should have most probably seen, forewarned, known that, hey, is there anyone out there that doesn't like us, right? Is there anyone out there that doesn't like we're denying all these medical claims? They knew it because it is very public, it's online. What either happened then, either Brian Thompson said, I don't need it, or the board was not strong enough to say, hey, it's not you, Brian, in this position. The threat against you is such that you need protection. There could be someone on a pathway to violence. The reason why I say that is that when law enforcement say there was no known threats to the event, facility, or surrounding area, we know what is going on in the Middle East with the Hezbollah and Hamas and Israel. I mean, there's just so much. I mean, there's an entire podcast episode there, but we don't need to rehash what is going on in the Middle East, only to say if we look at ourselves externally and we're honest with ourselves, we could say we've got an event going on at the Capitol Jewish Museum of which Israeli embassy staff are attending. Do we need a safety plan? Do we need police officers? Do we need armed guards? What does that look like? So it was interesting to me, perhaps, that the exterior or the sort of exterior view of the event and the persons present most probably should have dictated some type of security plan that involved police officers and firearms. So the fact that law enforcement say there was no known threats, I think if we look at the targeted violence and we look at the trouble in the Middle East, most of us with Monday morning quarterback will say, well, actually, this seems to me quite a high-risk event, right? So, I mean, I would consider this a high-risk event. I'm nor Jewish. I'm not nor a member of the Capitol Jewish Museum. I'm not part of the police department there, but I can look at it from an outsider and say this was most probably a high-risk event. And even though they say there was no known threat, it most probably dictated a safety team present or some type of armed security or law enforcement. What is also interesting in this case is that this unclassified report says that Rodriguez's alleged manifesto is already circulating online. And we've seen this time and time again, particularly with church mass shootings and with those that have used firearm violence. Kyle Odom did this in 2017 when he shot Pastor Tim Remington in the church parking lot. Straight away, one of the first things he did was upload his manifesto. So we're seeing this a lot more. Straight away, the manifesto comes out. And it says that the attacker's manifesto stated that the attack was intended to draw attention to the actions of the United States and Israel So I covered this a little bit before, but these are getting more political statements now, right? They don't want to be killed by the police. They're not going to take their own lives. They're going to stand up and be heard to say this is a political statement. So really interesting that his manifesto was circling. What you'll also notice as well, short time, is they said that his manifesto was circulating from the 20th of May. Now, that's a day before this attack. And again, easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but his manifesto was online in a way, was talking a little about what might happen or where he is on his violence. So his manifesto was released before he carried out this deadly attack. Okay, so then the next interesting piece is that the manifesto states that protest and political rhetoric surrounding the conflict had not amounted to much. And it said that the manifesto closes with a call to action for other Americans who believes would see this attack as the only thing to do. Now, the Violence Project, my good friend, Dr. James Denzi from the Violence Project and Gillian Pearson, they talk about this in the 4 things that all mass shooters generally have in common. One of those is script and validation. The script is they are following other mass shooters. If you're watching these mass shootings in the news, if they seem familiar, it's because there's this script that they are following and they are seeking validation for their ideas. This person would resonate with me. This person understands me. This person is just like me. We saw that with his manifesto. He says this is the political rhetoric surrounding the conflict had not amounted to much. So nothing is really happening right now. I need to take a stand. I need to take action. And then it then says the manifesto closes with a call to action for other Americans who believe they would see the world as he would. Call them to action. Do the same thing as I have just done. So super interesting. The Violence Project, if you're not familiar with their work, you can go to the thing as violenceproject.org. They've studied every mass shooting in America since 1966 to the current day. There's 4 things that these mass shooters generally have in common. One of those is script and validation. They're following what the last person did. That's why they all appear to be the same. And the validation that this person would understand me. That's what we saw in his manifesto. What they also say is they started to do the open source review. And it says, according to open source reporting, the shooter's alleged online accounts appear to have reposted content promoting Hamas and the Lebanese Hezbollah, and one of his accounts featured an image of footage from October 24 mass shooting in Tel Aviv. So there is some of the warning signs. Yes, he was a lone wolf. Were people close to him seeing his online postings? Was there leakage? I feel as this case goes forward, more leakage is going to come out. More people are going to say that we could see that he was on the pathway to violence. He wasn't, right? So I just thought I would just talk a little bit about this unclassified report. Like I said, if I can, at the very least, I'll drop a link in the show notes for it. If I can't, I'll just give you as much information as to where you can find this. But I thought it was super interesting for several reasons. The pathway to violence, where the law enforcement said that this person was outside the criminal justice system, so a bit of a lone wolf. The targeted violence. We saw this with United Healthcare CEO. The police said there was no known threat, no intelligence. However, it's the Capital Jewish Museum in DC, and there are people from the Israel embassy that are in attendance. I might have considered that to be a high-risk event. So it really helps us to inform what was the security planning like at this event. We learned about the manifesto that he had. What does he do? He calls other people to action. If you are like me, here is the call to action. Here is what you need to do. So lots of interesting learning from it. But those are my views. What are your views? Perhaps if you Google and find the article, you can learn more Please leave a comment below and share some of your views and perhaps what has resonated with you. But for now, you stay safe, have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.